Well, hey, my friends, it's Catherine from CatherinePooler.com. One of the things I love about paper crafting and card making is just playing and the joy of creating. So when I have a medium such as this crackle mousse, it brings me a lot of joy. So I wanted to make a whole video showing you how to use it and why it's so fun and why I love it. So the tools that you're going to want to have, you don't have to have all of these, but of course, this is what I recommend for a great experience. From left to right, we have the waffle flower media mat. We have the metal palette knife. We have the Nuvo spatula and the stencil pal. All of these are available in our shop and all will be linked below. And for a while, I did not have the media mat on hand and I was really sad about it, but we'll talk more about that later. Crackle Mousse comes in 8 colors: wrought iron, which is black, Egyptian gold, Misty Mauve, which is a really light lavender color, Russian white, Ivory Coast, Chameleon, Celestial blue, and pink gin. Here I'm using Chameleon. It is this gorgeous green color, and you'll find that Crackle Mousse is really creamy, and just taking some out of the pot using a palette knife or the spatula or any kind of stenciling tool that you may have. You just scoop it out of the tub and smooth it onto cardstock. So I've tried different cardstock with this. I've tried the Catherine Pooler Designs cardstock, which works great, and I've also tried watercolor cardstock. What you're going to find is it does warp your cardstock some. And I thought it was really funny because one night I put a bunch of crackle mousse on a piece of cardstock, actually the one that you saw in the beginning of the video with this color on it. I stenciled down with the bear grass stencil. I went upstairs. Next morning I came down and I couldn't find it. It was on my desk and it was completely rolled up in a cylinder. It was hilarious. But I was able to straighten it out. I put a heavy book on it for a little while and then I glued it down to a card base and it worked really well. So, a few ways to apply the crackle mousse. You can apply it really thin. You can smooth it out with your palette knife. You can even apply it with a paintbrush. So, one thing to know is the thicker the application of the crackle mousse, the bigger the cracks you're going to get when it dries. Here is a closer look at the stencil piece that I did. This is the piece that was in a rolled up like a tube on my craft desk. You can see how it flattened out pretty well. And then the swatch piece, the top one is a thinner layer, and then as I got thicker, you can see the cracks get bigger. So it's cool to play and experiment with how heavy you apply this medium. So I don't know about you, but I have been stamping for almost 2 decades now, dating myself. Um, but back in the day, I remember playing with crackle mousse, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, I was not a huge fan of it. And so I was hesitant to try this Nuvo Crackle Mousse, but I am loving this stuff. And I think the difference is the sheen. So the Nuvo Crackle Mousse, when it dries, it gives such a gorgeous shimmery sheen. It almost reminds me a little bit of stained glass. So I think it's really cool. And you're going to get some really good close-ups at the end here so you can see what I mean. This is Russian white crackle mousse. And one thing that's really fabulous about it is that you can color it any color you want with your ink refills. So I used Be Mine and I made this gorgeous pink crackle mousse. I'm going to use my rose stencil and I'm just going to stencil my pink crackle mousse over the stencil. And then at the bottom, I'm going to use, I wanted another color so I can kind of do a two-tone look here. So I grabbed my Grape Crush ink refill and made Grape Crush crackle mousse. And the more ink refill you add, the darker shade you're going to get. So that's a great benefit too. You can get different shades of the same color when you're coloring your Russian white crackle mousse. So I'm just going to blend these together over the entire stencil, making sure I have all the little nooks and crannies filled in. And then I'm going to take my stencil pal and just run it over to remove any excess and get a nice thin application. And then we'll pull the stencil off, and it's pretty gorgeous looking. And I'm going to set it aside to dry. Wait till you see how this came out. Another fun thing to do is create a watercolor background. So all I did on this piece, it's a piece of watercolor cardstock. Did I tell you earlier that watercolor cardstock does not warp and roll up as much as regular cardstock does? So you may want to try doing crackle mousse on watercolor cardstock. But anyway, I did a watercolor background here. I just took my ink pads, I swiped them on this piece of watercolor cardstock. I did a couple colors, and then I sprayed it down with water and let it dry. I'm applying the Russian white crackle mousse over the top of this stencil. It's called All Linked Up. Getting a smooth application there and then pulling off the stencil. Wait till you see this finished piece at the end of this video. It came out really gorgeous. So next up, we're going to play with mixing colors of crackle mousse. So here I'm using the Chameleon and the Celestial Blue and the Ivory Coast. So I'm just applying it over my square dance stencil, the Chameleon right up at the top, and then I'm going to apply the other two colors. I'm trying not to mix them too much. I want a little bit of mixing in between, but not too much where then it looks just like one color. I want you to be able to tell that there are three different colors on this one project. And before I go into another color, I'm making sure to wipe off my palette knife so that I don't cross-contaminate into the different jars. I'm going across it a couple times with my stencil pal, and you notice I'm wiping off the stencil pal in between each pass, because if I don't, then the colors at the bottom then will be applied up at the top. Does that make sense? And then my colors will get mixed more. So to keep that separation, be sure to and I learned that the hard way, but to ensure the separation, make sure you clean off your stencil pal each time. For my last background, I'm going to do a light ink blended background. I just want some subtle color here. So I'm using my All That Jazz ink pad. You're going to notice it's a pretty dark teal blue color. But when I use the ink blending brush by Pink and Main, I tend to like to go darker colors than the actual look I'm going for, because I have to go back quite a bit and add a lot of layers of color with the Pink and Main brush to get a darker ink blending. The ink blending from this brush is really nice and smooth, and it's pretty easy to get a nice look, but it just takes a lot of buildup of color to get a darker look. So go darker than the result you're looking for. So on this background, I decided to go for another two-tone look. So I'm using the wonky triangle stencil, and I'm first adding in the the Russian white, and then I'm going for the celestial blue. I'm not worrying so much about these colors mixing together. The white mixing with the blue is just going to lighten up that blue color, and then I'm going to get various shades of the blue. So I'll just peel back the stencil and reveal that gorgeous crackle mousse. I can't wait till it's dry. Okay, so this Media Matte by Waffle Flower, you guys, it's new to me, and I am totally loving it because I was having an issue with getting the crackle mousse all over my mat because I don't have my glass mat. My glass mat is in the office, and I was filming this at home. So I was getting crackle mousse all over my mat, and it wasn't cleaning up as well as I wanted. And it was also slipping around, so it was hard for me to cover an entire sheet of cardstock. So I thought, let me try this Media Matte, and I absolutely love it. It's flexible, and it's not really sticky, but when you put your cardstock on there, it doesn't really slip around, and it washes up beautifully. So I give the mini Media Matte a giant thumbs up. It's a great tool to have. So let's take a look at all the finished projects. So here is the wonky triangle background. Isn't it gorgeous? This crackle mousse is so fun to play with, and the results that you get are just stunning. So a simple scroll butterfly on the top with a simple stamped sentiment, and you're done. For the rose stencil background, a Love You Die, ink blended with Grape Crush, and then More Than You Know to finish it off. So this purple and pink background, I'm in love with it. I just think that shimmer and that crackle, it just looks gorgeous. Then this one was inspired by one of our brand ambassadors, Sarah Gruber, and she used patterned paper that looked like chipped or cracked paint to go with our outside your window dies and the shutters. And so I wanted to recreate that using the crackle mousse. So I thought that was really fun. And then here's a look at the two backgrounds. I actually did not create cards with these, but I wanted to show you what they look like when they were done so you can see that gorgeous texture and all that crackle right in there. And the Russian white over the colored background just gives a really cool look. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and a look at Nuvo Crackle Mousse. They're really fun to play with. I highly recommend them. I think you'll have a ball with them as well. If you have not subscribed to my channel already, I hope you will, and I will see you again soon.